This is Severe MMA. We're at Comic-Con, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Mr. Scroobius Pip.
Hello.
You know, you have a long association with mixed martial arts in the UK, as more as an advocate, I think, more than anything else. Where did that? Can you just give us a bit of background on that?
I was working in a record store years ago, and we sold DVDs, and I saw Tito and Chuck growling at each other on the front cover of a DVD, and started watching, and tuned in the same way a lot of people in Britain do, thinking it's cage fighting, it's men, big men beating each other up, and instantly got to see the skill. Even then, which was a good 10 years ago, it was still primarily a grappler against a striker. So it was good to see that it wasn't just two blokes punching until one falls over. It was skill and technique. And then, I started to push it onto all my mates and started to write on blogs. And as I started to get a following in music and other stuff, it meant that I could get asked in to write guest blogs, but actually kind of know about the sport, you know?
What is it about the sport that intrigues you? Is it the competitive nature of it? Is it the skill set? Why does it stand out to you over boxing or kickboxing? Or
completely? I think it's summed up by the fact that I regularly, almost every event, I stay up till 6 a.m. to watch it live, because the thing with MMA is it's never a real sport where the whole anything can happen is true, and it really is. In boxing, someone might get punched and fall down. That's exciting, but I can watch that the next day. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to stay up and watch it live. MVP taking a step back as Cyborg lunges for him and throwing that knee, I need to see that live. We mentioned in there, I remember staying up and watching Pettis v Henderson, and I was just exploding. It's that excitement of there's so many ways it can end. Equally, my excitement when with one of Chaos Sonnen's transitions on Brian Stan, it's not just kind of someone might get caught and fall down, it's anything could happen. Submissions could come out of anywhere, knockouts could come out of anywhere, just clinics could come out of anywhere, of GSP jabbing Koscheck for 5 rounds and just showing an absolute,
The UK scene, it's come a long way. Certainly in the last 10 years, it's come leaps since Bisping and Tough 3. We've 100%. Come leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Is the sport? How much more does it have to go? What more do we have to do?
It's still got to come a further way in the UK. It's the gradual spreading of the information and education, and it's why I talk about it a lot to a lot of my followers who are into my music and have zero interest in MMA. But I'll be tweeting about it and talking a lot because it is education, and it is that realising that it's not just tough guys, it's the most complete combat sport out there, the most all-round combat sport out there, and therefore, in my opinion, the purest and most exciting. I regularly get into arguments because I will describe it as, in my opinion, the most beautiful sport. And I do some spoken word and poetry, and people are surprised to hear beauty when it comes to MMA, but you can't tell me that MVP's movement or Anderson Silva's movement isn't beautiful, or Damian Maia's jiu-jitsu. The fact that Damian Maia is fighting people at the highest level, they all know what he wants to do, yet they can't stop him doing it. And it's not because he's storming in with a hard head and throwing punches. He's showing complete technique and skill to do exactly what he wants, and that just amazes me.
Do you get much of a chance to check out the UK scene? We're talking a lot of you.
Yeah. I mean, BAMMA is a great example of how far the UK's come. I will admit that about 10 years ago, I went to a BAMMA event and I wasn't impressed. I was like, no, it's beer swilling, big blokes, just stand up. As soon as it goes to the ground, everyone's booing. It wasn't good. I've been to 2 or 3 BAMMA events in the last year, and they put on a UFC quality experience, but equally the level of fighting is that high, from prelims to the end. And that's, I think, BAMMA is one of the best examples of trailing that. If you go through their back catalogue, you'll see, in my opinion, and this isn't very flattering, how bad it was. How it was just blokes scrapping and nowhere near the level of the US and of Brazil. But then you look at it now, there's a reason so many people from BAMMA are going into Bellator, are going into the UFC.
And Cage Warriors as well, doing the same thing for guys.
Well, Cage Warriors for a long time kind of had that higher standard earlier, but not as much exposure, it felt. It felt that Cage Warriors for a long time had a lot of people from all around the world. I guess Cage Warriors, yeah. Whereas BAMMA starting out focused purely on UK fighters, whereas Cage Warriors quite early on had people from all over the world coming in and competing.
You talked, I think it was one of your earlier blogs that you did, you talked about the fact that, because the UK didn't have a strong wrestling base, we would always be a little bit behind.
Sure.
Do you still stand by, or do you think now that perhaps the way that MMA has gone and the way that the training has gone, that we are going to catch these guys?
100%, because now you need to have a strong MMA base. You don't need to have, and a strong MMA base involves your wrestling, your BJJ, your stand-up. So, yeah, it's kind of beautiful how it's developed like that. If we had remained how it was 5-10 years ago, where strong wrestling and heavy hands, it's a pretty solid tool for becoming a champion, then the UK had always struggled. But now there's so many MMA gyms in the UK that we're getting that broad knowledge.
And last question, sir, and we'll let
Sure.
you go. But in a couple of weeks, we got a big fight. 205, going into MSG for the first time, and it's history all over it. Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor. Got to ask the question: who do you like and why?
I'm a big Alvarez fan. I disagree. I listen to a lot of MMA blogs, and a lot of people are saying that Conor will gas. I don't think Eddie's. I always remember in the Bellator days. One of my favourite interviews I saw with Eddie Alvarez was everyone saying, I trained for 10 rounds, I trained for this. Eddie was saying, I trained for 1 round. I plan to go out there and finish it and be gone. So I don't think the stamina will come into it. I think Conor can do it. I think he's got the skill set, he's got the ability, and I just, as bad as it is with him holding up a division and all that, just give him that moment of having 2 belts and history being made. The first ever time in MSG, the first ever time someone's held 2 UFC belts at the same time. It'll be a beautiful story.
I got to go one further. I say let him defend them. Let him try to defend them both once.
Yeah.
If he can get that defense in, and like 2 defenses in 9 months in 2017.
It's the history of it, and I completely understand people annoyed at how it's become the Conor show, and I get that. But we've got Pettis v Holloway. We've got a lot of fights out of the Conor show holding things up that are hugely exciting. I'm fine with Pettis v Holloway. Let's hold that up. I'm fine with that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. And long serving ambassador for the
Thank you
MMA
very
scene,
much.
Scroobius Pip.
Cheers.
Thank you.